I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello and welcome to 80s Movie Montage. This is Derek.
And this is Anna.
And that was Rowdy Roddy Piper. And anyway, he just started blasting.
I'm going to trip over his name probably at least 13 times.
You just call him...
That's why I just call him Piper.
Yeah. I get it. That was... I wasn't sure if I was going to get it.
You did really well.
Thank you.
I'm highly impressed. And Piper is the star of...
They Live.
That's right.
Or should I say John Carpenter's They Live?
You know what? I think you should say John Carpenter's They Live.
Yeah.
Like I was saying with our guest Bob, I'm a little bit ashamed to admit this, but I didn't actually realize initially when he picked this film that Carpenter was the director of it. But it is so fun. I really enjoyed it. We had an amazing time with Bob talking about this film. And so let's dive in.
Let's do it.
All right. You know what's funny about this movie is that within our Halloween series, because we already know what the next movie is going to be as well, we're leaning hard into 1988.
Yeah.
A lot of great horror movies, I guess, came out that year because we did Pumpkinhead last time. And They Live, also 1988. And I'm keeping everybody in suspense for what the next movie will be until the end of the episode. In any case, so... writers on this film. This one, well, I'm trying to think here. So last time when we did Pumpkinhead, it was loosely inspired by a poem
of the same name.
This time we have a short story that it is inspired by, not called They Live. It is a short story called 8 o'clock in the Morning by a writer named of Ray Nelson. He wrote it in 1963, so it precedes the film by good 25 years. So it comes from his short story. And then John Carpenter was the person who kind of took that inspiration and made the screenplay out of it. What's funny about him, though, is, a lot of people do refer to the film as John Carpenter's They Live. I think even the opening credits...
Yeah, that's why I said that. Yeah.
But he wrote it under the name Frank Armitage. So it's
written by Frank Armitage, really John Carpenter, directed by John Carpenter as John Carpenter. Okay.
Interesting little, I don't know why he wouldn't. I don't know if that's just something where it's a little wink or something, and he knows that everybody knows that.
I don't know.
I don't know. But he wrote it as Frank Armitage. And even though I would say most people do think of him as a director. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should retract that statement.
He does a lot. I mean,
he does a lot.
I think he would think of himself nowadays as a composer. He's more...
He's great at music.
Yeah, he's more about the music.
The one thing that he won't call himself is an auteur. I watched a little clip of him because basically there's this term called Carpenter-esque that gets floated about his types of films because he has certain things that come up again and again in his movies. Yeah. And so there was a clip about it. I mean, you could go to IMDb, you could go to YouTube. If you type in Carpenter-esque, I'm sure it will pop because there are other directors like Hitchcock, Spielberg, who have actually gotten their names into the dictionary because of the same kind of common traits that they bring up in their own films.
Would it be Hitchcock-esque or Hitchcockian?
I think in that particular case, it's Hitchcockian.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, he is a writer as well. He has 59 writing credits. However, as we go through them, you'll see that I did a count, 33 are related to a very specific franchise.
I wonder what that could be.
So among his writing credits, some of the very early ones, we have Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13, Eyes of Laura Mars, and then we go into the Halloween movies. So he has a writing credit on Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Uncredited.
Maybe he pulled, he's like, I don't want to be associated with this movie. And then, in terms of like all the other films that came after, I mean, he seems to be involved with like the most current round of films that are coming out. But because he established the characters in the original film, he's always going to be tagged in any other film that comes out because they're basing it on him. So he has character credits for Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, Halloween H2O, 20 Years Later, which I liked.
That one wasn't bad. Yeah, that was fun.
I was pretty annoyed that they just erased the fact that she had a son from the books.
They do a lot of that in this franchise.
It is so annoying to me. I hate that they do that in franchises.
The great thing about the Halloween franchise is that if you don't like a particular aspect about the lore, don't worry, because it'll just get changed for the next one.
Wait 2 years.
Yeah.
Halloween Resurrection, Halloween Resurgence, Halloween Awakening, and then I want to say like the Rob Zombie Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
So, because again, it all comes from him. So, some of his
that
other...
one seemed like kind of... It added like a... What was probably intended to be like a grittiness to it, but it just made it like it added this like mean-spiritedness almost in some of the scenes where it
like particularly brutal.
Yeah, like the genesis
isn't Danny Trejo, because wasn't he the guard
might have been
in the movie, and he like thought he had kind of established a relationship with Michael, and then he ended up killing him anyway.
I mean, that sounds exactly like something Michael would do.
I mean, I don't think that is any different than how the original Michael Myers would have acted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he has any allegiances to anybody, so everybody's fair game. But yeah, let me see here. So this was the 2007 Halloween.
Like a line between being like campy and like over the top, like violence in a slasher kind of movie, and then something that becomes like more visceral or brutal. And those are kind of like the thoughts.
Danny
and
Trejo.
To be clear, this episode is not about Halloween.
We're getting it in where we can.
Yeah.
Because the original is a 70s film.
Yeah. We'll get it.
We'll somehow get it in there again. But yeah, I mean, look, we'll put a pin in that. But I will say that, look, I like the originals. I appreciate that Rob Zombie tried to put his own make on it. And he obviously has a love for this franchise.
It was very successful. Like for what he, if like you measure that by, did it like really have the look and feel of something that he would work on? Yes. That just like my preference in particular for this franchise just wasn't like in line with that. But he definitely was able to make the thing that he wanted to make, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay, other Carpenter credits.
Yeah.
The Fog, Escape from New York.
Such a good movie.
Prince of Darkness, which he wrote under the name Martin Quatermass.
It's a nice
Don't
name.
know why, but he has character credit for Escape from LA, Ghost of Mars, and then, like I said, this most current round of Halloween movies. Again, he has character credits for Halloween Kills, which is coming out as of this recording in 13 days. Yeah. So we have that. And then coming up, we have Halloween Comes Around. That'll be interesting. And then a couple other films, pardon me, on the horizon, which my guess is this one also deals with the same franchise, because it's called The Haddonfield Nightmare, which I'm glad that they're kind of actually mixing it up a little bit. The one thing that is kind of annoys me about the franchise, like when you look at other ones like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, I think they get a little bit more creative with the sequel titles. Everything here is just like Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Like
they're starting to branch out a little bit,
a little bit, but it gets really hard to differentiate them because they're all essentially the same time. Anyway, and then we also have Halloween Ends, so called, and another movie that is just called Halloween. All coming up. So, okay, moving on to the very same gentleman, because he also directed this movie, John Carpenter. I mean, look, as all the credits will show, even though he won't call himself an auteur, if you're going to throw that term around, I think he qualifies, because the films that he works on are out of his own creation. So he has very much his stamp on it. That's why there is even that term Carpenter-esque. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's essentially all the same credits for films he's directed: Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, Starman. So he branches out a little bit beyond the things that he doesn't write himself. Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, yeah.
So we did talk about him in the past, but it's been a minute, because that was one of our very, very early films.
That was a while ago.
Yeah. That was a minute ago. Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Escape from L.A., Vampires, Ghost of Mars, and The Ward.
Vampires is kind of a crazy movie. It's
is that the one with James Woods?
Yeah, he's like a really aggressive vampire killer hunter thing. Yeah, no, it's kind of a fun movie. I don't know what to really
I have a memory of you and I watching it like I don't know, a lazy Saturday, have it on TV, but I don't remember paying much attention to it.
That's fair.
So, okay, moving on to cinematography. This film was shot by a gentleman named Gary B. Kibbe?
Yeah.
I'm going to say
Is
that
it?
name.
Okay.
Kibbe? Kibbe. And as you can tell from his credits, seems like he's pretty much Carpenter's go-to guy for at least a lot of his movies. Not all of his movies, a lot of them. So among his credits, we have Prince of Darkness, RoboCop 3.
Yeah, that's all
I
got to say about that.
That was a very judgmental, Okay. Double Dragon, In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Escape from L.A., again, vampires. Soldier of Fortune, Inc., which actually is a TV series. Just throwing in a little bit of TV there. Ghost of Mars. And then his final credit was on The Librarians. So, okay. Oh, well, what do you have here? Music by a guy by the name of John Carpenter.
All right.
So
that checks out.
As you were saying just a minute ago, he is a composer. So yeah, pretty much on all his movies, you're probably going to find out that he wrote it, he directed it, and he did the music for it.
Is there anything he can't do?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it seems like this guy, and you know what? I don't get the sense that he is this like, not like I know the guy, but that he is this like egomaniac, can't give up, can't delegate to other people. It's just that he has certain aspects of filmmaking that he really wants to have his hand in.
I don't think anyone's gonna like, especially going back to the Halloween franchise. No one's gonna say, maybe they should have got someone else for that music.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Big Trouble in Little China had great music. Escape from New York. Did he do those? I better check.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, and it's kind of like, his movies have a particular like look and feel and sound. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So apologies for the redundancies, but I must do my due diligence in listing off the credits of the composer of this film.
All of those same ones that you said before are the same ones here.
Yeah. So, okay, let's see how quickly I could get through them.
All right.
Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, The Fog, Escape from New York, Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Escape from L.A., Vampires, Ghost of Mars, Halloween, Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends.
Got it.
Just a sampling. Okay. But on this particular film, throwing in a little bit of a surprise here. He wasn't the only composer on it.
No, he was not.
Yeah. So, and he had a relationship with this other creative. His name is Alan Howarth. Do you think that's Howarth?
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with that pronunciation.
Okay. Yeah, they did a lot of collaborating together. And so I mean, he certainly has his own credits, which I am about to list. But he should not be forgotten that, you know, they worked hand in hand with some of the more iconic films that we have here. So we have Escape from New York. Now, he wasn't part of the original Halloween movie, but he did come on board for Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Is Halloween 2 the one that he doesn't like because of like the story? I think in particular, like
Are we talking about Carpenter?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I've read, and as I usually do, I take everything with a grain of salt, but he never wanted to do the sequel.
That was, yeah.
And that's why, like, Jamie Lee Curtis's, well, who could have anticipated that it would have been the huge success that it was, you know? So nobody knows ahead of time if a film's going to do well, but that's also why she has on that, like, awful wig.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't supposed to, there wasn't supposed to be a sequel. And I think the deal that was struck is Carpenter didn't want this to particularly be a Michael Myers franchise. He wanted it to be more of an anthology.
Well, and then you get to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and everyone's like, maybe we should go back to Michael Myers.
Exactly. So he was, I'm guessing, probably pretty disappointed because that was his vision.
Yeah.
Is to have all these different kinds of Halloween stories. And I mean, it's hard to say. If we didn't have the original Halloween, would we all still take such a hard stance against Season of the Witch? I don't know.
Yep.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think on its own, if there was, like, I don't even know how you can even have this discussion, because how do you not, like, be unbiased by the fact that there's a Michael Myers movie out there?
I think
two of them.
I think it's possible to say you're, like, you get to a certain point, you realize this is not a Michael Myers movie. It's something different. And even as something different, it just isn't as successful.
It's not as successful, but I think there's something. I think I'm coming around a little bit is what I'm saying.
Okay.
To Season of the Witch.
All right.
I don't know if there's just something there, because it's like, you know, it's super dark.
Yeah, Again, this is not necessarily...
I know, sorry, we're getting a little off track here. But okay, so let's go through Howard's other credits. I think I was in the middle of the Halloween ones. And so Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers, and then Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. We also have Christine. And so, again, collaborating with Carpenter.
Yeah.
Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, and then some of his other credits outside of that collaboration. Brothers in Arms, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. It's a mouthful. The Omega Code. The Omega Code. The Prince of Light. Alone with a Stranger. Brutal. House at the End of the Drive. We Come Back for Halloween 2, The Return of Michael Myers. Shiner. I don't know that one. And Hoax.
All right.
So, okay. Moving on to editing. Another two for one here. We have two individuals who cut this film, the first of which, Gib Jaffe.
All right.
I like that name.
Yeah.
Gib Jaffe. All right. Among some of his credits, we have Break-In, Rambo, First Blood Part 2.
Is that Break-In or Break-In?
Break-In.
Got it.
N apostrophe. Rambo, First Blood Part 2, Ruthless People, An Occasional Hell, The Fanatics, Screw Loose, The Guardian, which is a TV series, another TV series, The Cleaner. And then he's done a lot of, like, TV movies. It's hard to name TV movies because they're not typically projects that people, like, remember, but he's done a lot of them. So, and then the other individual who cut on this film was Frank E. Jimenez. And so we have for him, I mean, I don't think that they were, like, necessarily an editing duo, but they both also worked on Rambo First Blood Part 2. So that's kind of odd.
Interesting.
But then, you know, he has his own credits: Mannequin, The Wrong Guys, and Kill Me Again.
One more time.
Kill Me Again. There you go. Okay, so finally we are getting to the stars of this film. Of course, we must start with, I'm not going through his whole name because the Rowdy, that's part of his wrestling persona.
It is, yeah.
So I'm just going to call him Roddy.
That works.
Roddy Piper. And like I'm pretty sure I had brought this up with Bob. I was shocked when I saw the number of acting credits he had. 170.
That is surprising.
170 acting credits. It's amazing. I mean, it bums me out. We briefly mentioned it on the tail end of our Pumpkinhead episode. We had watched this really great documentary on his life.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to get that perspective of him. And it's a real bummer that he's no longer with us. I mean, he, outside of this larger than life persona, he seems like he was a really solid family man, loved his wife, loved his kids. You know, they do a lot of interviews with his children. And while I think all of them talk about how at times it was really difficult because their dad was away for a lot of their childhood, that when he was there, he did everything he could to try to like make up for that time, and was a really present father and a really great father. And it was a really neat look at his life. I mean, I don't even know how we came up. I mean, we didn't seek it out. It kind of, I guess, was just on TV or something. And
it found us.
Yeah, it found us. Yeah. So just that aside, that it seems like he was like a pretty neat guy. Okay, so among these credits. So first, we have all his non-wrestling work. I think I did bring up that, you know, I say 170 acting credits, but over 90 of those were in some way related to his wrestling work.
That sounds right.
So, yeah. So takes it down to like 60, really. But that's still impressive.
That's still like 60 more than a lot of people.
Yeah, it's still really impressive. Okay, so going through it, I had to put this one. It's not a movie, it's not a TV show, but I had to do the Cyndi Lauper video for the Goonies.
Well, I mean, there are so many wrestlers in that.
There are.
Captain Lou, Rowdy. Rowdy, yeah. He would have been Rowdy.
Rowdy, yeah, he would have been Rowdy in that. So the Goonies are good enough video. And then just a lot of film work, honestly. Body Slam, Hell Comes to Frogtown, which is an 80s movie, so that's technically an option at some point in the future. Buy and Sell, Sell being C-E-L-L, not S-E-L-L.
Double meaning going on there.
Yeah. Resort to Kill, Back in Action, No Contest, Jungle Ground, Marked Man, Terminal Rush, First Encounter, Last to Surrender, Jack of Hearts, Honor.
Last to Surrender, so he still surrenders.
Still surrenders.
He's just the last one to do it.
Honor, Domestic Import, Blind Eye, Street Team Massacre, Lights Out, and Fancy Pants.
All right.
Can't say that outside of, I think, Terminal Rush, I don't think I'm familiar. Well, I know have a vague familiarity with Hell Comes to Frogtown, but everything else I'm not super familiar with. It seems from like the titles, which this makes all the sense in the world, that they're kind of maybe action, probably leaning hard into his like kind of physique and that sort of thing. I don't think he's in like too many movies like Witness or Ordinary People, you know.
No, that would be wild.
They drew on his strengths. So
he was in a couple episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as Domaniac. And then he also voiced a character in an episode of the animated show Adventure Time.
Cool.
So yeah, those were a couple different things he did.
Yeah, I mean, I think people maybe, if they only have kind of a peripheral view of, you know, oh yeah, he was a wrestler. He did a lot more than that.
Yeah, he was kind of a complicated guy when you look at through the lens of like just what you'd expect, I guess, for a wrestler. I think what you know, doing some research for They Live and seeing how just like the premise that Carpenter created with you know, people in power, being in control, that has in some ways become, used as like a weapon,
misguided.
Yeah, by anyone who thinks that they're being subjected to some kind of conspiracy theory. It's kind of gotten pretty far from the original intent that Carpenter was trying to get out there. And I think at one point Piper was on, in an interview with Alex Jones, and they were both just commiserating on how the movie is in fact a documentary. And I think
Piper was?
Yeah. So
interesting. Okay.
That kind of complicates things, but I think from what we've seen, it doesn't necessarily change the fact that, like, yeah, he was a more complicated guy than you might think just by looking at, he was a wrestler.
I will say that I think he did a surprisingly good job in this film as far as the actual acting. I do see those moments, especially when he is in scenes where there's more action, there's more aggression, where that rowdy character comes out. Yeah. Especially he does this like, and when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, it's just like a part of him. I don't even know if he knows how to like disassociate from that if he is in like those moments where he's fighting or whatever. But okay, moving on to the character Frank. So who he has that infamous fight scene with, who is played by Keith David. This guy. Again, I was like, jaw-dropping moment. 339 acting credits and counting.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, he's in everything.
He's incredible.
I gotta say, I'm about to go through. What did I write down here? Yeah, I did the best I could, but I have about 25 credits for him.
Out of how many?
339. I don't think that's that bad.
Best of the best.
But I will say that I am personally really glad to have watched this movie, and now to have this movie that I associate with him.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Oh yeah, I already know what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
Requiem for a Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that line, no.
It is so hard for me to not immediately picture him when I think of that movie. So I'm glad to have this movie. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Much rather remember him from this 45-minute fight with Piper.
Exactly. All right. So among his many, many, many credits, we have The Thing.
Yeah.
Carpenter film. Platoon, Roadhouse, Always, Men at Work, Reality Bites, The Quick and the Dead, Clockers, Dead Presidents. He also has done TV work. He's been on the TV series Gargoyles, as well as Gargoyles, The Goliath Chronicles.
There are some people that really love that show. I'm not one of them, but it's kind of like got a cult following, yeah. Okay.
He was in the movie Armageddon. There's Something About Mary. I remember him from that as well. He's Mary's dad.
Okay.
Yeah. He was also in the TV series Todd McFarlane's Spawn.
There was a series for that?
According to IMDb, there was.
Who am I to question?
The all-knowing.
Yeah, their resources. They know.
Now, here's what's funny is that these films were almost back-to-back in his career. Could not be two more different movies, which just speaks to the crazy extent of his talent. I also know him from Where the Heart Is.
Okay.
I've made you watch this movie with me.
I kind of remember it.
With Natalie Portman and Ashley Judd.
Oh, yeah.
And she's this like young, unwed mother, and he kind of is a friend to her in the film. So he's in that, and then like he follows that up with Requiem for a Dream. Man. So, yeah.
That movie is just like, if you feel like you have like a little bit of hope left and you want to lose it, you just want nothing left.
You really want a bummer time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want it to stick with you for maybe a couple days.
A couple decades. Look, it is a well-crafted film with astounding acting performances.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning performances. But I can never watch that movie again.
No. I mean, it had Shooter McGavin in it, so that was fun, I guess.
All right, so moving past that one. The Replacements, Barbershop, Agent Cody Banks, The Chronicles of Riddick, Crash, Cloud Atlas, and then a little bit more TV work here. We have Community, Greenleaf, and then he's voiced on Rick and Morty.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a sampling of his extensive career. Okay, next we have Meg Foster, who plays Holly. Like I, kind of get into with Bob, I don't feel like we really learn a lot about Holly. I could be intentional. I mean, it's a really short movie. They actually did have a little bit of space to go into more character development with her, but the choice was made not to.
Yeah, that's true. On one hand, they could have, but they also, like, we talked a little bit about the pacing and how,
sure,
it makes sense in the context of what they were trying to do, but I don't know that more backstory would have necessarily helped with that.
I don't mean to necessarily get you on her side, but...
Oh, I'm not on her side.
She, she's the third billed person. Like she has a very prominent role and we know virtually nothing about her. So it's the one thing about the film that I was a little...
I know that she has a great house. She has
Hollywood Hills, right?
Yeah, what I assume to be near superhuman strength to kick Piper through a window.
That was very surprising and very impressive.
Yeah. And I know that she rats out everyone.
And she has a passing resemblance to Kirstie Alley.
I thought she did.
Yeah. Piercing blue eyes. Absolutely piercing blue eyes. Yeah. So among some of her other credits, Adam at 6 a.m. Okay, so here's the thing. I knew she looked familiar to me. And I think the reason why, she was on the TV miniseries The Scarlet Letter. I'm pretty certain they showed that to us in school. Because when I was in high school, we had to read the book, The Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, everyone. I think everyone had to, right?
I would say probably most American schools.
Yeah.
Probably. But there is this miniseries, and I'm like, oh, I think that's where I know her from. I think that's where I first became acquainted with her. Because she plays, what is it, Hester Prynne?
Oh, okay.
She's the main character.
Yeah.
So, okay.
She had that letter, right? She was the one who had to wear it. That's how that story works?
Yeah. Do you remember anything about...
I remember that she was also in a few episodes of Quantum Leap.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll get... I was actually asking about the Scarlet Letter.
I know, that's why...
You have no recollection of... Do you know what letter she had to wear?
A.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Well done. Masters of the Universe, Leviathan.
Oh, that's... Okay.
That's where you know her
That's
from?
what yeah. Was she the, like the sorceress?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. We know her from very different projects.
We do.
Okay. Leviathan, Stepfather 2, Make Room for Daddy.
Okay.
That's the name of the movie. Shrunken Heads, Space Marines, The Lords of Salem. She was on the TV series Ravenswood. Jeepers Creepers 3. It's an interesting title. Any Bullet Will Do.
Any.
Yeah,
it's fair.
Another interesting title. There's no such thing as vampires.
Oh, I'm willing to fucking bet that there are vampires in this.
And then beyond all of those different projects, she's just made a lot of TV appearances where she's been kind of one-off on different TV shows and that sort of thing. So, okay, moving on to, and what's funny is that this gentleman actually was in the last movie that we covered.
He was.
But we didn't talk about him because we had so many other actors to cover.
He played a critical role in both movies.
He did, yeah. And sorry, we're not trying to intentionally withhold information here. So we're talking about George Flower.
George Buck Flower.
Yeah, probably known as Buck Flower. And he plays Mr. Wallace in Pumpkinhead. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we're kind of crossing episodes here. But we talk about, I think, the character of Mr. Wallace, but we didn't really give time to going over his career there in that episode because we had a lot of other people to cover.
Yeah.
But it all worked out because now we get the chance to do that here, rectify that. So, he played, the only naming he gets in this movie is Drifter.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that naming the characters was barely even a consideration in this movie.
I would agree.
Between Nada, Drifter, when you look through IMDb and you look at like how some of the actors are named as their roles, it's just like they're more descriptive than anything else. Street preacher, guy who does this thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm guessing that. Well, that's what's funny is that really Frank and Holly are the only two that have like names, and they only have first names. They're not even given last names.
Some of the other characters' names, just to provide context, would be Street Preacher, I mentioned before, Family Man, Bearded Man, Brown-Haired Woman, Family Man's Daughter, Black Revolutionary, Female Interviewer, Foreman. So yeah,
well,
it was more just like,
I'm guessing that the intention was that in context of what the film is about, that yes, to like the aliens or these creatures or whatever they are, we aren't anything beyond these, like, we ourselves are creatures or vessels for them to further their own pursuits.
Yeah.
So
there's one more that I think speaks to all of us. Stratton Leopold was credited as depressed human.
Okay, so Buck Flower. If you're like, I don't know who you're talking about when you say Drifter, he's the gentleman who is part of the community of the homeless at the beginning. He's the one that's like trying to get the TV to work. And then you see him later on. He makes kind of a surprise appearance when Nada and Frank are trying to blow up the spaceship. And now he got a glow up.
He cleaned up nice.
Yeah, he's in a tuxedo because essentially he kind of made an agreement with these creatures, these aliens, to help with their needs. And so, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So now
he sold out the camp.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because that camp was...
I think that's what we all kind of assume.
Yeah. I think I don't know if he knew about the glasses that were in the church across from the camp, but it seemed like he gave them some valuable information and got a glow up and a cool Apple Watch out of it.
All right, so prolific career. Among some of his credits, we have Satan's Lust.
Oh.
Had to put that one. This one, Country Cousins.
Oh. Okay.
Curious what that one's about. He's been in some interesting... I mean, I did intentionally pick these because I'm like, these are some very interesting titles. The Dirty Mind of Young Sally.
Wow. Okay.
The Sex Prophet. It gets better. Orgy American Style.
What kind of actor was this?
I know. I was actually thinking that. I was like, IMDb, I don't think they do adult movies.
So,
and then we get more wholesome.
Do
fair. Well, he was actually in a trilogy. It starts with The Adventures of the Wilderness Family, and then The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family, and then Adventures of the Wilderness Family 3.
I mean, he was also in a Playboy bedtime stories video segment, The Ring and the Garter.
Yeah, he is a diverse actor.
Yes.
We also have The Fog.
All right.
Escape from New York. So a relationship there with Carpenter, it seems. Starman, to that point. Mm-hmm. If you want to try to make a connection of where you might have seen him, if they live, it hasn't crossed your path yet, you probably have watched Back to the Future.
Yep.
And if you have, then you might know him as the homeless guy who Marty has a couple interactions with, namely when he comes back to 1985 and wakes him up and, he kind of jumps over his, oh my goodness, I'm blanking, his like little sleeping area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, is he the guy who was like bemoaning of the drunk drivers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, what is his name? Red? Why do I think his name was,
maybe?
I thought that's what Marty called him.
Could be.
Yeah.
And he makes a appearance again in Back to the Future 2. Like we just said, he's in Pumpkinhead. Mac and Me, Village of the Damned, Wishmaster, Bloodsuckers, Crash Point Zero, and then his last credit, because he's no longer with us, was the TV movie They Are Among Us, which feels like a spiritual sequel to They Live. I'm not sure what it's about.
It does. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to Peter Jason, who I guess he has a name as well. Gilbert.
He does. He's one of the last ones.
Yeah. So it's like Frank, Holly, and Gilbert. This guy too, I was like, wowzas. He has 267.
He's very recognizable.
He is. I think he's more recognizable as an older actor as well, because I know him from, still working, still going strong. Again, it was challenging to kind of cull down all of his many credits, and I have this with like 4 S's, lots of TV appearances. So he's been on a ton of different shows where he's like come in for an episode and then that's it. He was in Mommy Dearest, Trick or Treats, 48 Hours, The Karate Kid, Dreams.
Which one?
The original.
The real one?
The real one.
Okay.
Yeah. And, when these credits come up, I mean, look, you're in a movie or a TV show. Not everything is a huge role, but he's in these projects. So The Karate Kid, Dreamscape.
Are you telling me that he was not the Karate Kid?
He was not
in The Karate Kid?
Not the Karate Kid.
Damn.
Oxford Blues, Brewster's Millions, Prince of Darkness, Arachnophobia, and The Mouth of Madness. So again, seems to have a nice friendly relationship with Carpenter's in a couple of his movies. Village of the Damned, Congo, Mortal Kombat, Escape from LA, The Glimmer Man, Dante's Peak. He was in the TV series Mike Hammer, Private Eye.
All right.
Ghost of Mars. He was in the film Adaptation. I'm going to have to go back to that one and see where he is in that. Love that movie. Seabiscuit, Employee of the Month, Kicking and Screaming, and then he's also recently done a fair bit of television, like where he has longer stints. So not just like in a one-off appearance, but like I've brought up the TV series where he has like a recurring role.
Okay.
So Deadwood is one of them. Arrested Development.
Storage Dave.
He was in the film Hail Caesar. And then lastly, the TV series Baskets.
Oh, yeah. The one with Zach
Exactly. That's exactly.
Galifianakis.
There you go.
Woo!
All right. So now we're coming on to the last of our actors that we're covering for this film, Raymond St. Jacques. Mm-hmm. Do you think that I'm doing a okay job?
I'm confident it's not name? Raymond St. Jackie's.
Yeah, right?
It's definitely Jacques.
Jacques. Okay. So, samesies. He had a career where he made a lot of TV appearances. And then outside of kind of like one-off type things, he was on the TV series Rawhide.
Oh, okay.
So he had a career long before They Live came along. He was in the film The Green Berets. He was also on the TV series Falcon Crest.
Wow.
The film The Evil That Men Do. This is an interesting credit because he's uncredited for it. Usually when you have like an uncredited credit, it typically means that your scene was probably cut for like a film.
Okay.
But I swear, I mean, it's been a minute since I've watched Glory, but I love that movie. And I pretty distinctly remember the scenes with this character. He plays Frederick Douglass.
I wonder if there are different like versions of that, because I can't, like, now that you mention it, I feel
it's
like
very early on.
Yeah.
When Matthew Broderick, I mean, he has yet to get his assignment. And, it's before any of the actual action of the war. I mean, the war is ongoing, but he isn't a part of it yet. And so I pretty distinctly remember like a party. I want to say it's like at his family's house because they are very prominent abolitionists. And unless I'm just like doing revisionist history in my head, I feel like Frederick Douglass, the character, was at this party and it was this actor. So I don't know why it would be uncredited.
Get it together, IMDb.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how that worked out. And then among some of his, last credits, Voodoo Down and Time Bomb.
Did you mention some of the amazing 80s TV series?
Please go for it.
Briefly. Airwolf, Cagney and Lacey, The Fall Guy, Murder, She Wrote, The Love Boat, Dallas. These were all like more one-off roles. Yeah. But that's like, he was just like stopping by to do like a greatest hits run of all the 80s TV.
What are the most popular 80s TV shows right now? I will be on them.
MacGyver.
You said
Matt Guyver. It's MacGyver. MacGyver?
Well, you just had like the emphasis in an interesting way. I just said like MacGyver, but you were like MacGyver.
Yeah, I don't know why I said it like that.
You didn't say it wrong. It's just anyway. All right, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
Film synopsis.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna read it and see what you think of it.
That's all you can do.
They influence our decisions without us knowing it. They numb our senses without us feeling it. They control our lives without us realizing it. They live.
I mean, that's a synopsis, I guess. It's not really a synopsis as much as it's something entirely different.
It's like a extended tagline.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not really a synopsis at all. It doesn't tell you anything really about what you're about to watch. A synopsis is not meant to keep you kind of on the hook and in suspense the way that this language does.
Nameless, down on his luck, construction worker arrives in LA only to uncover an alien plot to control humanity.
That's so good, Derek. And that was on the fly.
It was.
That was really, really good. And that is a synopsis.
There you go.
Well done. You should reach out to them and see
IMDb, you have my contact information. Just get in touch.
Okay. I mean, a couple little bits of fun trivia before we go into our talk with Bob. The iconic line, the I'm all out of bubblegum, that was from Piper.
Yeah, he was just jotting down notes and like ideas, and that one was obviously a winner because it's one of the most iconic parts of that movie.
So I think that that's pretty cool. That Carpenter, again, I don't think he's so precious about his material. And he, takes ideas from his actors. So I thought that was kind of neat. And look how it played out.
It worked out pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, to your earlier comments about like what is the meaning of this film, I mean, Carpenter is pretty clear that, first of all, this movie was made in 1988. This wasn't some prescient thing about what is happening in 2021. So the people who try to make it into that are cuckoo. But this was, in fact, a critique of Reaganomics.
Yeah, it was specifically just a middle finger at Ronald Reagan.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it was meant. It's not. I mean, you can find deeper meaning in it, of course. Mm-hmm. For an '80s movie of this, like of the nature of They Live, maybe that's. I don't know. It's just people have definitely brought out interpretations that have no basis in reality, and Carpenter in particular has had to like go out.
Yeah, and actually make a comment, like make a statement.
Because people were, they tried to turn it into this anti-Semitic message. Mm-hmm. And he, even in like 2021, he was talking about this film in the context of the election and what all of that means. I mean, obviously, based on what he wanted this movie to be, it's kind of clear where his sensibilities lie. So it's got to be frustrating for him.
Sure. I mean, look, that's the part of what I'm not saying that it's okay for people to kind of take what he's done and fit it into their own agenda, but there's a certain amount of like, if you're an artist and you're putting something out into the world, you can't really control. That's
always going to happen.
It's always going to happen.
With the specific messaging that this movie put out there, it was bound to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Like the more intention there is behind what you're doing, where there is a kind of message to what you're saying, probably the more likely it is that somebody's going to take it and twist it for their own purposes.
And the irony is that Donald Trump is the epitome of everything that this movie was giving a middle finger to. And if that guy put on the sunglasses, he's definitely looking into the mirror and seeing an alien.
And so on that note, let's get into it with our amazing guest, Bob.
Let's do it.
And so today, Derek and I are so very thrilled to have with us Bob Mabity. Bob is a musician. He is a Macon Film Festival board member, and He is also the technical director of the Grand Opera House in Macon, Georgia. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Really glad to be here. Looking forward to this.
We're super stoked. I mean, we've said it before, this is our favorite time of year. We love all things spooky and Halloween, and this was a ride to to watch this movie. This was so fun to watch, and so we are super stoked to talk about They Live With You. And so I will kick off, as I normally do, with just first question. Do you have any memories of your first time seeing this movie? And if you do, just what was that experience like? Did you like it right away? Was it something that jived with you right away?
Oh, well, I absolutely loved it right away. See, as I grew up as a kid, my family, because I'm a little bit older, but we lived in an area where you didn't have a lot of movie theaters. You had a couple smaller theaters, but you had a couple of pretty good sized drive-ins. Mm-hmm. And so my family, when I was just a wee lad, would go to the drive-in theater, and they would go, okay, now you go on up there to the playground down by the screen and don't watch the screen and go play. And when the movie's over, come back to the car. And, as a child, I was really good at following directions. So instead what I would do is go down to that playground. And if anybody who's listening's ever been to one of those places, there's always that giant, overly tall slide that sits right in the middle of the playground there, almost dead center in most places. And I would climb to the top of that slide and sit down. And the other really brilliant thing about that was they'd send your kids down there to play while the movie was going, but they also had speakers out there so you could hear everything that went on. And so I grew up at a time where I was sent to the playground to sit on top of the slide to watch movies, and they would watch some of the most awful horror movies, as well as other styles of movies, but mostly horror movies. My father was a big fan. And I would sit on top of that slide and watch things like The Car, which is a really great B film about a possessed car that's going around and killing people. And of course, at 6 years old, you're going, yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
And it just kind of built up in me as I went along that that was what I gravitated to was horror movies. And when John Carpenter came out with Halloween, that was pretty much the first movie that I ever watched that scared me. It didn't scare me, but it I'm tough to scare. Let's put it that way. But that one was one of those movies where when I came out of the theater, I was looking in the back of the car before I got in the car because I didn't want that guy to come up over the back of the seat and get me. But I was also very intrigued by it, and it's the kind of horror movie that just kind of draws you in. And John Carpenter, the director of They Live, there was something about the way he did it. Not a lot of blood. Using a lot of atmosphere and everything. So I became a John Carpenter fan right away at a young age. And when They Live came out, I was excited because not only was I a fan of horror movies, I also was a fan of wrestling. And this movie starring Rowdy Roddy Piper played into both of those perfectly. And on top of that, the subject matter to me reminds me a little bit of my favorite artist, Philip K. Dick.
Oh, okay,
and, just that the whole kind of story that's there is very kind of Philip K. Dick, and so I was sucked in right off the bat, and just dove right into it, and it became one of my favorites right off the bat. I think I went and saw it when it came out originally. I think I went and saw it 5 different times in the theater. Just because I liked it that much.
Wow. I mean, and also you've covered so many great things that I hope I want to make sure I remember all the great points that you brought up. I mean, I think first of all, I want to bring up Piper. When we do our research on these movies and I go through kind of the main players, I did not realize the extent of his acting work. Now, granted, on IMDb, they count all of his wrestling appearances as acting.
It is acting.
It is. You're totally right.
So.
You're totally right. And I should, it's a weird thing because I think that they should be praised for their level of acting, but then I feel like there's a segment of wrestling fans that don't want to hear that.
They don't about now.
You think now they're more.
I think now most people are in on like what you're watching, but back then in the 80s, I think, at least like growing up watching it myself as a kid, there was always like, is it real? Is it fake? I don't know. Maybe I was just not a smart kid.
The physicality is absolutely real.
For sure.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So, because I loved Hulk and all those guys back then, Andre the Giant. And he was, Piper was such a character.
Super villain.
Yeah. I mean, they all kind of had their like back and forth moments. Like sometimes they were heroes and sometimes they were the villain. But in any case, I was astounded by the breadth of his non-wrestling acting work. And I was super impressed by him in this movie. I mean, you could tell when he would get agitated, a little bit of that, wrestling persona would kind of come out in his voice. But his more subdued moments in the film were super impressive. I mean, how did you respond to that particular performance? Or was, I think that was like still pretty early in him branching out from his wrestling.
It was one of his first.
Yeah.
It was absolutely one of his first roles. And, I took it with a grain of salt in those days. I was never one of those, even though I grew up with wrestling. My grandparents, that was part of what you did on Sunday was,
Aww.
You got home from church on Sunday and you sat down to have some sandwiches and turn on wrestling, and you watched wrestling until Hee Haw came on. That's what I remember from my very young days. Those are what you did after you'd gotten home from visiting with family and everything like that. And when you go to the grandparents' house, that's what always happened. And so I grew up with a lot of those wrestling characters in their early days because I lived in the St. Louis area at the time, and they had their own little Midwest Wrestling Alliance up there, and had a lot of great wrestlers through there. And Rowdy Piper actually came through there more than once. And so when I saw him in the film, it almost was a sense of comfort in regards to you're familiar with this character. Mm-hmm. So it kind of gave you a way to be able to connect to the main character of the film because you already know this guy. And you're just seeing him, and he's very Roddy Piper all through the film. But you're seeing him as he's dealing with all the different situations that are coming to bear with him in the film. Mm-hmm. And to me, the way, he did a great job in the film, actually. And it seemed like that was just the way Roddy Piper would act when those things were going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, I don't usually go down this path with like possible recasting, but do you think that was the right choice for Carpenter to make? I don't really, it's such an interesting choice that he made, in terms of having this person who is primarily known as a wrestler to take on this role, instead of somebody who is a more, quote, legitimate actor. Do you think that there were any weaknesses in the performance? Do you think that he was probably the best choice for that particular character and that particular role?
Well, when you look at John Carpenter's work, typically that protagonist character in his films is a little rough around the edges. Mm. And with that kind of rough around the edges approach, and a little campy as well, because if you look at other films like, Escape from New York and things like that, that main character always is filled with overt swagger and terrible one-liners.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China, exactly. Same thing. So those are those kinds of things to where I honestly think that if you'd have had somebody who was of a higher level in acting, I don't know that they would have brought the same energy to the character, because they would have been getting deep into the character, trying to project this character, where Roddy just was Roddy. Mm-hmm. And he was perfect for what that character was. He's big, he's tough, he's intimidating looking, he's affable, and nothing that was asked of him was Shakespearean, of course.
Sure.
But he seemed to definitely be the character throughout the film, and I appreciated that. I really wouldn't want to see anybody else do it. And I don't think that if anything, I think the movie would have lost some of its charm if they'd have had somebody other than Roddy in that role.
No, well said. And, now that it's coming up, I do remember reading that, obviously Carpenter has a really close relationship with Kurt Russell and had kind of thought about him for the role, but he was also like, well, I just worked on him on 4 prior movies. So he kind of was like, all right, as much as I love Russell, maybe it's time to give somebody else a shot.
Plus, if you're going to go head to head with mullets,
yeah.
I might give the nod to Piper, maybe.
Yeah. Well, the problem with going head to head with mullets with Piper and Russell is that Russell would come up to Piper's navel. So he'd have to get a couple of apple boxes to be able to get up to be head to head with him. Because Russell's a little short guy and Piper is a big old boy.
He's a big guy.
I will say that, now I'm totally going off topic, but I don't know if you have seen the more recent Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell. His hair is still magnificent.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
His hair is incredible. So
my hair is very chrome like that. I long to get it to be able to go into that mane-like look.
Right?
Mine doesn't do that, but it's long and chrome like that. So,
it's glorious.
Every once in a while I do get mine to poof out just right. But it doesn't happen very often. I keep it in a ponytail most of the time. So we'll see.
It's hard not to notice, but his mane is just like, wow, that Santa has a glorious mane of hair. But in any case, what I'm curious about is, I can't claim to be, I love John Carpenter. I can't claim to be, an aficionado of his work, but it does seem like in terms of the setup for this particular story, that it was more so than his other films, a very slow burn.
It's very deliberate.
Yeah. And so I'm curious because, I even asked Derek when we were watching it just ahead of talking to you to clock the time. And, we are a full half hour into the film before he finds the sunglasses.
Right.
And so I was curious about your take on the pacing of the film, and because overall it's a very short movie, it really is just a hair over an hour and a half. So once he finds those classes, we just have an hour more to go. So how did you feel about the pacing of the film and the way that it is set up for the events that eventually come to pass?
Well, for me, just like you guys are looking at it as well, that's a long time before you get to the point of what's going on here. I really feel like what they were doing prior to that was helping set the scene, to make the impact of what the overall message of the story was to point out all the differences in financial equality and of life itself between these people. Because what they show early on is they show you all the down and out. And then they show a little bit of interaction with the well-to-do at the same time. But it's really you're building the character of, you're feeling not just the character, Roddy's, his plight, but you're seeing the plight of all those people in the encampment. And, you got, each step was to get you to that point, because as would be in any case with the revolution starts in the underground. And so what better place to lead you to where the revolution is starting than an encampment filled with people that are down and out. and to get there and to really build up just how far down, because today, all these years later, 40 years since that film came out, you see encampments like that all over the place.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the time that happened, that wasn't quite as prevalent.
Pervasive, yeah.
Pervasive, blah, 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 blah. So it's all he's doing there is he's kind of using the foreshadowing of, see all these people, this is what leads to the revolution, and it builds through that, and you kind of need that for the other part. Otherwise, it would be what the next 30 minutes of that film are, which is nonstop gunfire and people attacking each other. But he used that part so that when he got towards the confrontation section of the film, that he didn't have to stop and explain anything. So, by the time you get to the point where he gets into the church and finds the glasses, by the time you get to there, you've all the established pieces are there. You've established Roddy's character. You've established Keith David's character. You've established the preacher's character. All of those people are there, and they're all working for the underprivileged people that are out there that they're trying to help better their lives. And the underpinning of that is the fact that the creatures are the ones that are pushing them into that position, and they're ready to fight against them. And if you had to keep telling the story once they got to the action part, it wouldn't be an action film at that point.
That's a good point. I mean, we're going into it now already kind of knowing where it's going to get to. So from that perspective, it felt like it was taking a while to get there, but watching it fresh, not knowing, all of that stuff did help build it. The only thing I would have wanted more of is, how did they come up with these glasses?
Yeah.
And then even more importantly, you had
see the chemistry set?
Yeah. We did see the chemistry set.
Didn't you see the chemistry set? The chemistry set told you how they made the glasses.
I love that throwaway where they're like, yeah, so these people have been working on this formula.
It takes what, 14 seconds?
Yeah, exactly.
Where they pan across the chemistry lab and then you never see it again.
That's what I was telling Derek. Like when it first comes on screen, I was like, is this like a meth lab? Like what is this?
Definitely. Yeah. Walter White could have been there just a few years later. And
I think they outsourced the glasses, and that formula was just a coating.
And even more impressive is that they have a contact lens version. Yeah. I mean,
they don't even have contact lenses today that are good for astigmatism.
Exactly.
How are they getting it to see everybody? I don't know.
It was wild. I was like, this is highly impressive.
I love the contact lens thing because okay, we're dependent on these glasses. If they break, they can see that we have them on.
Yeah.
So when they're like, oh, also we have these contacts, and that solves a lot of problems. So just
story.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that one moment. They just slid it in there too.
And the church full of boxes of now fairly useless glasses.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to give everybody contact lenses. It's like, you wasted all the time on
you
this when you've got these over
money.
Here. You were even boxing them up and risking your life just to get these glasses out there. You could just put these contacts in the mail.
Exactly. I love that. Was so hilarious. I mean, look, so many movies have to do that. Like we can't explain every little thing about how this is happening, especially in sci-fi. So,
contact lenses in the 80s though were like, you need to get the saline solution, and clean them every day.
Yeah.
We're not talking about dailies here.
We're talking about 81, so they weren't even soft.
Yeah.
They were hard contact lenses.
Rigid, gas permeable.
And the other part of the fun part of that one was they hand them to those two guys who obviously don't even wear glasses.
Yeah.
Yet they just matter-of-factly open those things up, stick the contacts
and they know
right
exactly
in their
what to do.
I've put contacts in my eyes before, and let me just tell you, the first time you do it, it's never that easy. The 100th time you do it, it's still not that easy. So that was pretty impressive that they just knew right how to get those contacts in their eyes. But they did a really good cut right there as they were putting the finger up to the eye.
Yep.
They did a little cutaway, and it's like, hey, surprise, the contacts are on. They didn't even have to show the contacts. Just an empty finger going towards his eye. It was good thinking to work on the budget because, that's the other side of this that you've got to keep in mind.
Yeah.
This was not a super high budget version of this film. Mm-hmm. If they were making it today, there wouldn't be the hand. Those people were in obviously a prosthetic mask kind of thing, and they didn't use much of anything that was futuristic. I mean, the primary source of contact is a watch, which is also a little foreshadowing in 1981.
Totally.
If you think about that,
yeah. Very much so.
You get your information on your watch and talk to people on your watch, and we're doing that today. 40 years ago, nobody was thinking that other than the folks watching Star Trek. We're hoping, but the sourcing of materials is always a fun thing when you're watching a film like this. You got to remember this is fantasy. Sure. It's not real life. Somewhere along the way, I'm sure that there was an army of scientists that had found this by accident. They were probably riding in a tinted out limo and just happened to pull up somewhere and went, "Hey, look at that! Those guys don't look the same. How did we see them? Let's try some limo glass."
Yeah, I mean, how did they even come upon?
I would love a They Live prequel.
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, it's really well done. And I do think that, like, to your earlier point about there needing to be kind of this necessary groundwork put down, I totally agree with you that, especially, from what I've read of what the intended message of this film was supposed to be from Carpenter's perspective, that he wanted it to be real, like to show the real injustices that people were facing. And I mean, it is, between the watches and the encampments, I mean, it is crazy how much of this film is so relevant for today. And I mean, it really hit home as well, when it's set in Los Angeles and right. Yeah. And so, yes. Derek and I, this is where we live, and as far, I mean, encampments and the homeless population is something that is like a daily conversation in this city. And I know we're not the only city where that's the case. And so, and especially, when they come in and bulldoze, like that is something that's very...
It literally happened to Echo Park.
Yeah. It just earlier this summer. And
yeah, it was bizarre to see that happening because in some cases... what was less realistic was that the encampment wasn't big enough.
Right.
And that the police response wasn't violent enough to match what we saw just within the last year or so.
It was really nuts to see how just how timely it was. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
No, I was agreeing with you on those points as well. That's what I was talking about earlier, was the fact that though the film was made 40 years ago, that those same things are actually more prevalent now. Everything from, like you were talking about with the encampment, but to things like the messaging that you see behind the glasses. Yep. The obey and do your work and consume and all of that. That's kind of the message that is sent by retailers and advertising companies today. They don't do it quite as ham-fistedly, but sure. It's kind of the same thing, oh, you must consume, and they're hiding things right in plain sight in a lot of things they do. And so this to me in that film, it was a very intelligent way to approach it, and the story itself was different than most of the horror movies that I had been watching at the time.
Yeah.
Now my question for you guys is, so I'm taking it that the first time you saw this film was just earlier when you watched it for this podcast.
Derek has seen parts of it before. Well, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but you said that.
Yeah, I'd seen portions of it. So like when they were obviously I've seen the bank scene a million times.
Right.
I've seen, when they end up in the spaceport, or I guess it's a spaceport of sorts towards the end. So I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but like a lot of movies from the 80s that you might see on TV or on cable, and you just kind of like walk in halfway through and watch whatever's there. This was the first time possibly ever that I just watched it from start to finish the whole way through.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I know that I've seen the fight scene because it's like a known fight scene.
Very much so.
Yeah, in cinema. So I know I've seen that before. I was aware of the like bubblegum scene. Like that is just such a part of like culture, that line. So I knew about that. But outside of that, this was totally fresh for me seeing this film. I didn't even realize initially that it was a John Carpenter film. Like I was like, oh, okay.
Really?
Like, yeah, no. I mean,
the music didn't give it away.
Well, you know what? I mean, well, actually, that's funny. We're definitely gonna bring up the music a little bit later.
Cool.
I just was more familiar with like, I guess what you would say are maybe his more traditional type. Well, like, I mean, I'm a big fan of the horror work. So like, I love Halloween. I love The Fog. The Thing. Yeah. So
The Thing. So good.
Right. So those are the ones that I really gravitate towards. So yeah, this was very fresh for me.
I mean, he had made those, and off the success of that, he very much wanted to make a movie that was ultimately just a middle finger to Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
And like you even see Piper at the end giving the finger, and I'm like,
middle finger. Yeah.
That finger is meant for you, Ronnie.
That's right. Roddy's giving it right on out. Let me tell you.
He goes out strong. So, I mean, in terms of like how it's so hard though, because like probably, I don't know, what would you say, Derek? It's like a 80-20 split in terms of when we cover a movie, if we've seen it already.
Yeah, that's fair.
We've had few that were really fresh to us.
Usually one of us is more familiar with the movie than the other. This is one where we're probably on more or less
even ground.
Yeah.
The only thing that is unfortunate is like, even though I'm saying, oh, it was fresh to me because the film is from the 80s and we're several decades removed, it's hard to not know stuff about the movie,
absolutely. Oh, no. If you don't know, I came here to chew bubblegum and kick some ass, and I'm all out of chewing gum. If you don't know that line, then you haven't been alive, because that line has lived much longer than most people. Most people don't even know where that comes from nowadays.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
They hear that and they know they've heard it, but they don't know where it comes from. So I can understand that, and there's nothing. It's impossible. If a film's good enough, you can't live in the bubble.
Right.
So, and if you've heard of it, that means it's made an impression on enough people to have people talk about it, that even people who haven't seen it feel like they have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that film is to me. So,
yeah. So it was definitely, like the finer intricacies of the story I didn't know, but I had a general like knowledge of what I was about to see. It was just a matter of like when. But one thing that I was very curious is like, so we've talked about Roddy and kind of, what he brings to the role. And honestly, like in terms of films that we've covered, usually we have a bigger cast of characters. I feel like this cast of characters, it's pretty lean. As far as like people we really get to know. And so I was curious about what you thought of kind of this back and forth between Roddy's character and then Keith David, and how you felt about how he kind of also supports the story and Roddy's journey through it.
All right. Well, first, let me say, I love Keith David.
Mm-hmm.
He's an amazing actor. He does great work. And I'm going to slide him a little bit just for a moment, because he has that very distinct voice.
Yeah.
And he's always had that voice. And I'm pretty sure for a while he used to do some City Confidential voiceover stuff. And he actually, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, but you can call me out if I am. I don't care. But I'm pretty sure that Keith David did the voiceover for a City Confidential that they did about my hometown, Macon, Georgia. Here, which is a terrible thing because it was a horrible situation that had happened. The whole thing was a law student had been murdered. Turned out it had been a neighbor of hers that was also a fellow law student who had gotten obsessed with her, and he had killed her and ditched her body and the whole 9 yards. But when they did the City Confidential for it, David Keith would go on, in the sleepy little town of Macon, Georgia. So I do that all the time myself. So Keith David kind of lives in my heart. But I think that pairing him with Roddy, first of all, you have a accomplished actor in Keith David, playing opposite a accomplished wrestler in Roddy Piper, and so it actually, to me, kind of helps give it a little more depth because Keith David's character is definitely the more cerebral of the characters and the more passionate as far as, the people. And Roddy Piper's just, I'm here for me and I'm going to take care of me, but I'm trying to help you, brother, kind of thing through there. And, I really feel that you had to have somebody strong in that character as the disbeliever to start with. Because you needed someone who was carried enough weight on screen to where when Roddy's up there being Roddy, trying to tell you got to look at the glasses, that when he does that you've got to have somebody who's back there almost in his Othello voice going, I shall not look at your glasses.
I mean, he was getting the living crap beat out of him.
It was hilarious that this whole fight was over the fact that he refused to put on sunglasses.
I mean, the symbolic nature of that and the act of putting on the sunglasses and seeing the truth and no, I don't want to, that's not lost.
Yeah, that's actually really good point.
That's exactly what it is. It's like, look, I am just trying to live. Don't show me what's really going on. Because I'm afraid if I know what's going on, I might have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is take care of my family and get my family here. And so, he had that strong ethic in the character, and he represented so many people. Even right now with what we've got going in the world today, there's so many people that are very strong in their beliefs, and they don't want to know beyond what they're being told.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear something that's not what they think they already know. And because they're afraid of what they're going to find out. And that to me is what Keith David's character represented to start with. And then of course, after he got the crap beat out of him, and he beat the crap out of Roddy in part, which that was the other thing I liked, is that they were barely friends. But Keith David's going to really try to help him because that's, the moral character of that character.
Yeah.
Roddy's a bit of a less than pleasant character to start with, but he's trying. You could, but Keith David's trying to help him, but at arm's length.
Well, because he thinks he's a murderer at that point.
Right.
Well,
look at him.
Well, it was funny too, because it's like, of all the places to track him down in Los Angeles, he finds him in a back alley to be like, here's your week's pay. How did you ever find him? Ever? How would you ever
I was just happening down. Don't we always walk down this street and look down that alley and look for somebody we know?
Thing.
Oh, hey, Roddy's probably going to be in that alley over there. Let's go.
I was like, okay, I'm going to let that slide. But no way would you ever just, track someone down like that in Los Angeles, especially back then.
Well, maybe they
John Carpenter's cut out the 15 minutes where he was taking a bus.
They use the Find My iPhone feaure.
Yeah. Movies today would be so different if you just took those movies then and gave them a cell phone, and it would totally change the outcome of movies. Because I see that all the time. Have you ever seen the movie Bullet?
Yeah.
With Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Right. Bullet would be a whole different film if he didn't have to keep stopping at a payphone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you're bringing up a really excellent point, because that's something that is like very much part of storytelling today, where like, as a writer or just the filmmaker who takes on a project, you have to kind of make a choice about how much are you going to lean into what is the reality of how we communicate today. Like people typically aren't picking up a phone to call somebody. They're just texting them or, something of that nature. But that makes for, a much less exciting type of storytelling. And, and it's the same reason why like you still see in like TV shows, people just like show up unannounced at somebody's home. And you're like, who does that anymore? Nobody does that anymore.
I know people who do that.
You do?
I'm not one of them, but I know people who do that. There's nothing more unsettling this day and age, which didn't used to be the case.
Right.
They'd be sitting in the house and all of a sudden the doorbell goes off and you look at each other and you go, did you invite somebody else?
Yeah.
We got to get out of here. Someone's here.
You're so right, though. I mean, that is so true. Where, I remember when I was younger, a knock on the door or a doorbell ringing was not cause for alarm.
It was an opportunity for maybe something cool's going to happen.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, there was like no negative reaction to that.
Now, if there's a knock, I can guarantee nothing good is going to come from this.
Yeah. Now, we live in like a gated area. So it's like there's a very limited amount of people who could even be knocking on our door. And
it's our landlord.
Yeah, exactly. And so but now you hear a knock and you just look at each other and you're like, do we answer that? You just maybe try to be quiet.
Do we just jump out the window?
But yeah, it's just a totally different world. That's so funny though, that you do know people who still old reliable go right over to their house.
They happen to be in the area and they come right on up and ring the doorbell, and it's hard for me to scold them.
Sure.
As long as it's an appropriate time of the day.
Yeah.
They're friends, and I have a lot of friends that will come by and do that. I'm not in a gated community. I am on a house on a hill, but it's still not something that people today do.
Do they actually say to you, "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood"?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Man, I happened to just be driving by, and I was wondering if you were here. Wanted to come by and say hi.
Aw, well, that's sweet.
Oh, I look. I don't have a problem with it. At the time that the doorbell rings, I do, because just like you guys want. Did you order food? And no, I didn't order food. Are we expecting a package? No.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
That's the other thing. Did you order something? Yeah.
Did you order something? I didn't order anything. Did you order something? I didn't order. I mean, I guess it could be something I ordered. I order a lot of stuff, and some of them. But I didn't see anything on my app that said a package was going to be delivered.
It wasn't supposed to come today. Well, in any case, what were you going to say something, Derek?
I'm going back to the fight.
Sure.
The fight.
Because what I appreciated from the fight, I know that like Piper's experience brought a lot to that, and it's the standout fight not only in a lot of movies, but in this movie.
Right.
Because when you see the police are taking apart the encampment, there are some...
And they're beating on
they're not even really...
And,
they're not even really fights. They're just showing people getting beaten up, but they're pretty bad.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Yeah.
They are pretty bad.
Like
it is amazing, the like jumping quality when you have Piper involved.
It makes that fight even more intense after what you've just seen with like the obviously like pulled punches. Yeah. And then you see them and you're like, oh my God.
Well, I'm super impressed because like, you said this at the very beginning of our chat, Bob, how he's a big guy. Well, Keith David's a big guy too, because he's like shoulder to shoulder with him.
Yes.
So I was very impressed with, and I don't know, I think it would be an interesting conversation to have with him about like, what were your feelings going into this? Like, were you down with like having like a pseudo real fight with Roddy Piper,
professional wrestler.
Yeah, with a professional wrestler, or where you're like, this is not part of my acting world, you know. I think that would be a fun conversation to be had. But yeah, I mean, it's a long fight, but it's so well
more than 6 minutes.
Yeah,
more than 6 minutes. And
it's so well choreographed.
It was originally supposed to be only a minute long.
Okay.
It was actually supposed to be less than a minute in the film. But what happened was you've got Roddy Piper. And how often are you going to have the opportunity when you're making a film to have an actor who is that used to doing physical work and not only be used to doing physical work, but have the skills already in place for a lot of those wrestling moves and things that you see that happen in that fight scene.
Yeah.
So when you see something like that, now I don't know. I haven't really heard much about what Keith David had to say about it. But if it was me and I was being asked to do something like that and it was with a pro wrestler, I go, there couldn't be a better person for me to do this with.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because they earn their living out of beating the crap out of each other every day or once a week or what. It depends on their schedule. Beating the crap out of each other on a regular basis in such a way that they're able to do it again in 2 days. Which means they know how to fall, they know how to pick you up, they know how to throw you, they protect the person that they're moving as much, if not more, than the person themselves does. That's part of the fight game when it comes to wrestling. And so that fight scene was not supposed to be what it was. It was supposed to be very brief, and Roddy was going to kick his butt and put the glasses on him, and they were going to move on. But they got started, and they just couldn't stop. And so it just kept going. And Roddy and Keith, as well as the fight coordinator, just built it beyond there because, when you're working with a wrestler, that's where he's comfortable. So, he's suddenly at a point where he's not just coming up with one-liners on his own because he came up with the bubblegum line.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's going, "Oh man, we're doing this. I wonder if can I do a suplex on him? Can I do an arm drag into the wall or into the trash can?" So he gets excited because that's his part, and they I think they made a good choice, even though the fight scene was way longer than it really should have been. It kind of goes along with the way the film is, a little more hyper realistic on everything. So if they're gonna build up the story, they're gonna take a half an hour. If they're gonna fight, it's gonna take over 6 minutes long. If they're gonna attack the police, the TV station, it's gonna take forever.
Well, I think what you were saying earlier, which I think you said honestly, it was just like so beautifully stated, was the idea of people being so reluctant to really face the reality of certain, issues and situations. And so I think that the way that you stated that really shows in that fight sequence and how incredibly resistant, Keith David Frank, the character, is to really see what's happening around him.
And look what it got him in the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But I was curious about your thoughts on the portrayal of the aliens, because first of all, I loved the creature design.
Yeah.
With those characters. And I think that them, making a choice that not only do you kind of see what's really happening around you when you put on those sunglasses, but then everything goes to black and white.
Right.
I thought that was a really effective move.
With the contacts black and white?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they were.
So, yeah.
Yes, they were. Even though they don't really focus on that much because of the fact that during the contact stuff, there's so much action happening. So it's not a real focus on that, because at the point where the contacts are in and they're running through that area, Piper and Frank have already they've determined that all these people that are here are bad, and they don't care if they're human or not.
Yep.
So it's not as big of a point to go to that vision.
Got it.
At the end, when he's looking at the satellite, when you see him look at the satellite, it's back to black and white, where he can see the energy that's being produced to create the illusion.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say that the choice with the black and white to me was effective, because I think that it could have maybe, first of all, it probably would have been a lot more work for the designers,
yes.
But to make those creatures feel authentically scary, and not just corny in color.
They are at the very end, though.
That's true. That's true. But it's very quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for most of the movie, you're seeing them in these, monochrome shades. And I loved that choice. I thought that was like so well done. I think it really adds to the eeriness of realizing what is actually going on around you. I don't know. How did you feel about that choice, Bob?
I like it because for me, that kind of presents that subtext of, the looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. This is kind of the opposite of that. Whereas normally you're looking at all the colors in the world, which makes you sometimes miss the things that are right under the surface. And when you break it down to just being black and white, that's when you can see the truth.
Really well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally agree with you. Good. Well, then, okay. So now that
you're either an alien or you're not. It's black and white.
Either you're an alien or you're not.
That's right. It's either an alien or you're not, and that's all there is to
it. Words to live by. So with the ending, I mean, I'm just curious. Do you feel like the ending? Well, maybe just what you think about the ending in general, but then also how you feel Carpenter wants to end the film. Do you think that it ends on a hopeful note? I mean, where do you fall with that, Bob?
Well, Carpenter does one of the things that I actually really enjoy when it comes to a film, especially of the horror genre, which is the main character, who is your hero throughout the film, doesn't live. He finishes the film by finishing his task, but he doesn't. He dies trying to do the thing he was trying to accomplish. And so, to me, the idea behind it is the veil gets lifted through his action, and then he dies, and then the rest of the world has to deal with what they now know. Now, does it mean that we've won? I don't think so. They never really give you kind of any, they don't go any further with it, which is the one thing that I almost wish that had happened. Those scenes towards the end there where after the ray is gone, they're almost just comedic. But at the same time that they're comedic, they're also kind of poignant as well, where people are suddenly seeing these people they've known for a long time in their real light. And the expressions on characters around the creatures as they become exposed, there's a wide range of reaction to that, which kind of gives you the thought pattern about how the world's going to deal with it. The people in the bar just stare at the guy. But they don't scream, yell, run away. They don't even move away. The ones that are sitting right next to him just sit there and stare at him. The woman at the end, she screams, and other people ran away in a couple of other scenes when they saw them that way. But some of the people barely responded at all. So that in itself is kind of also a little bit of a societal plug in the way the world works, is that there's some groups of people that even if there was a monster sitting right in front of them, it wouldn't change what they were doing. Where others, seeing the real light that they were gonna treat them bad and run away. Because of the fact that we don't really know completely what the end goal of the creatures are, other than to make the world better for them to be able to survive and to thrive. You don't really see a downside to the people that are joining them, other than the fact that the people that don't know are being oppressed.
Right.
Yeah.
So once everybody's exposed, what happens? You can't oppress those people anymore, but you can. Because people that are oppressed, we've had people oppressed throughout history.
Millennia.
So, that's kind of a telltale thing. Even when the monsters are known, it doesn't change the world from spinning.
So do you feel like Carpenter leaves the ending intentionally ambiguous?
Yes.
I think he just wanted people to see. That's
a good way of putting it.
The point of this movie is for you to have to acknowledge some of these issues that I'm going to put out here.
I can't force you to take action.
But this is,
But hopefully I can get you to see.
Yeah. I think as far as the reactions at the end, one of my favorites was in the TV studio when the newscasters change and you hear someone in the background just say, "You look like shit. I'm out of here."
Well, that's probably my final question is that, all in the same vein, I thought it was a really interesting choice because sure, maybe they're, like the bubblegum scene. Okay, obviously there's a comedic element to that, but for the most part, it's not a comedy infused film, and so the fact that like the very final moments of the film have kind of this like huge comedy tone to it.
There's even a reference to Carpenter and Romero in the bar scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
So did that work for you that all of a sudden kind of this like different tone is thrown in the very closing moments of the film? Do you think that was necessary to like have it be maybe palatable for audiences? What do you think?
I don't think that John Carpenter really cares if it's palatable.
Okay.
To be honest, I think he was doing exactly what he intended to do, which was to poke at the political system as well as his critics and things like that, because Carpenter was never really the type of director that was highly lauded through his career. He's always kind of been thought of that guy who made Halloween and The Thing. He's always had a little tongue in cheek to what he does. And to me, I'm a lover of dark humor. I'm sorry to say, and so for me, I picked up a lot of comedic things all through the film.
Okay,
even in some of the scenes, just the way he used things like the subliminal messaging. So if they're in some place and all the bottles are behind like the aristocratic woman in the grocery store, who's talking down to Piper through the whole thing, and he comes back with his
formaldehyde face.
Yes, colorful clip. As there's all the things written behind him, like sleep and buy and all this kind of stuff that's behind her there, and she's being that upper crust as an alien or creature, since we don't know if they're aliens or not. We don't really know where they're from, and so to me, the end was kind of the point that we went through all of this high tension, because the going through the TV station, when they come up from the bowels and work their way up through the TV station, there's a lot of tension through that all the way through. And then there's a slight level off of that tension whenever Roddy Piper sees Polly. once again, great coincidence that in LA you just happen to end up in the TV station out of all the TV stations that Polly's at, and Polly just happens to walk by as you're making a gun blazing trail from the top to the bottom of it. Yeah, well,
but that's what movies are about.
That's well, I mean, if you had to explain everything, we couldn't get through it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that just we'd all be watching Lord of the Rings, the extended cut.
I don't have that much time.
So I'll see you in 14 years. So I mean, you don't really have the opportunity to do much more, and Carpenter always has a little bit of levity, no matter what he's doing. If you go back to Halloween, things like when he sticks the guy to the wall with the knife, and instead of it being just horrible, brutal thing, it's a very cold, methodical thing. But then the quizzical look on Michael Myers' face as he turns his head, looking at the guy hanging there. That's a very John Carpenter thing. And so to me, he's built your basis at the beginning with the encampment and the going to work and the whole 9 yards and all of that, and bringing Roddy into his family, which is the homeless encampment, which is not what you expect from when David Keith is talking. Then you go through the awakening where they find the glasses, which I don't know if you're aware, but the lenses in the glasses were referred to the Hammond lenses.
Oh, okay.
There you'll hear it mentioned once or twice in the film, and they were named after Dr. Albert Hofmann, one of the Swiss scientists best known for creating LSD.
That's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Which also plays a part into why you put on the glasses and it's like a rush and like a drug, and you take them off and you see. So you put the glasses on, you put on the LSD glasses, you see the world differently.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of references to that in there, but that's where those lenses came from, and so you go through that little awakening phase. Then you go to the anger phase of now you've realized that this is happening and you're ready to stop it and save humanity, even though you don't know if it's going to save humanity or not. And then you have the climactic ending, and at the end there, well, you can't just have Roddy Piper die up there and it get exposed. You need to find a way to have these people come out, and they've already kind of given you that throughout. So, the lines about formaldehyde face, and there's a couple of different places where he does that he's already set the tone for that to come back again later. The only difference being is that before, that tone was only when he had the glasses on. And at the end, once the ray's gone and you don't need the glasses anymore, then suddenly everybody can see it. And so that's going to come out of more people that responds to it. Me personally, I love dark humor. So make all the horrible jokes you want to during the apocalypse. I'll laugh along.
Well, on that note. No, seriously, though, this has been just such a joy and our pleasure to get to talk to you about this film today. We love doing this. We love when we have somebody on the show who so obviously is, this film is much beloved for you, and that totally shines through. It was just a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much, Bob, for that.
My pleasure. It was great to talk to you guys. It was entertaining for me as well to be able to hear your perspective on things and how you saw things, because the movie's a little fresher to you, where it's lived with me for 40 years. For you guys, it's not as much a part of your world. So hearing the way you see those same things that I saw, a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. And, one thing that's always fun for us is that, many of our guests, they're creatives, they're working on fun stuff. And so if you wanted to, I'd love for you to tell our listeners what you've been up to and what you might have going on right now.
Oh, well, that'd be great. I would love to tell you about a little project I've been a part of. Now, I'm just a small part of this project, but it's something that's kind of near and dear to me. I'm a musician. Been doing it most of my life. Not successful, obviously, but I'm successful to me. I get the beauty of getting to play music with my friends. My drummer is the same drummer that I've been playing with since I was 15.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, sharing music with your friends is a beautiful thing, and it's one of my favorite things to do. And as fate would have it, there is a young man who just turned 10 and his father in Delco, Pennsylvania, who the young man plays guitar. He plays guitar and he plays bass, and his dad plays drums. And they, during the whole pandemic thing, of course, everybody's kind of shut in and shut down. And so Dad would go down in their basement and jam with Tyler, that's the young man's name, and they would play songs. And his dad would video them and put them up on YouTube and post them on Twitter and Instagram and things like that. And as fate would have it, one of this young man's favorite bands is one of my favorite bands. It's a band called Clutch out of Baltimore, Maryland. And the last time Clutch had performed live at the time this all started was the end of December in 2019. They did their little holiday run. And so everybody from all these bands is sitting at home not really doing anything. And the young man and his dad did a number of Clutch songs that they posted online. And the lead singer from that band saw them online and reached out to the father and said, hey, you know what? I'm not doing anything right now. If you'd like, I'd be glad to put the vocals down to one of those Clutch songs that you guys are playing. Now, me, I'd have just about wet my pants. I'd have been pretty excited, and I went, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Fallon. Yes, which song?" But as a 9-year-old, which is what he was at the time, he went, "Yeah, that's great and all, but I got some songs of my own." To be so young and so
amazing.
Full of an endless spring of wealth. And so the singer from Clutch, his name's Neil Fallon. Neil said, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but, go ahead.
Deed goes unpunished.
send me the track. And so they sent him a track. And as it turned out, and you can actually see a video online for that particular song. It's called The Joy of Homeschooling. By Delco Detention. Make sure you check that one out, because the whole story of where this came about, Neil tells the story on the video ahead of time. But he sends the kid sends him some tracks. Turns out, as Neil put it, the kid's got some riffs.
That's awesome.
So he said, you know what, I'll do it. And so he wrote lyrics for a song that they had sent him, and sent it back to him for it to get mixed down. And he shot a video in his workshop to go along with the theme of It Came from the Basement, because that's where the kid and the father did all their little videos from. And one thing led to another, and boom, that came out and drew a lot of attention. We're in a Facebook group that is about Clutch, where we talk all things Clutch, because I talk about Clutch a lot. How many times can I say Clutch in one sentence? I don't know. It's Clutch. I do love that band. I don't know if you can tell. But I was a part of that group. At one point or another, somebody suggested to them that I do vocals to one of their Clutch songs, and I did. It was a load of fun. You can actually see that one on YouTube as well. It'll be under the Delco Detention stuff.
Okay.
And then when I did that song with them, the kid really liked my voice and asked his dad to get in touch with me. And they said, would you like to do a song on this thing? We're doing a record. And I, of course, said, for this kid, absolutely. Why not? And they sent me a track, and I worked on it with them for about a month, back and forth over the internet. thank goodness for the internet. We could have never done this kind of stuff before. And recorded this track. It's called From the Shadows. You can hear it on their Bandcamp page. If you're familiar with Bandcamp, just type in Bandcamp. It'll come up, log in, and then look for Delco Detention. Okay. And the whole record's on there. You can purchase the record if you'd like. You can listen to the record if you don't want to buy it. Listen to it first and then buy it. Buy one for your friends. We're trying to send this kid to college. I'm not making any money off of the record, nor do I have any desire to. It was just a blast to be able to work and help with an aspiring young musician, artist, and do anything I can to help show them that there's people out there that appreciate what they're doing and encourage them to keep doing it.
That's awesome. And
so that's what I did. And actually, when you guys got on the line with me, I was working on another song, unbeknownst to you guys, because I didn't realize that the microphone was on our Zencast, and you couldn't hear the song that I was listening to in my head as I was just sitting down for my first time trying to get a vocal medley together for a new one for him. But it's Delco Detention on Bandcamp. Right now you can find it a couple of other places, but because of reasons I won't mention, where I'm trying not to promote those, though you can go to your normal outlets to listen to it. Okay. But for the reasons of theirs, I'm going to respect that and not do that. Sure. But go give it a listen. There's a lot of great artists on there. There's the song with the guy from Clutch. There's a instrumental with the guitar player from Blind Melon.
Oh, very cool.
There's another instrumental in there with the guitar player from a band called Fu Manchu. And there's a track that's got guitar solos from a guy playing lead guitar with Black Crows and Earthless right now. And there's a number of really good bands and people from those bands that stepped up and jumped in here, and the kid's got 15 songs on a record and they sound fantastic. And I think everybody should go and check him out and give him a thumbs up and an attaboy, because we want people that have that kind of talent and that kind of passion to keep making music and doing art for us as we move forward, because that's what the world needs.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. We fully support that. You guys, please go check out the record and all those amazing songs that Bob just brought up. And Bob, it is no surprise to me at all that you were so gracious and generous with your time and just supporting this young artist. That's amazing. And thank you for being just as gracious and generous with your time with us. We really loved having you on the show. I'm just going to say that Bob is the best.
He really is.
And we had just the most amazing time with him. So thank you again, Bob, for your time. It was super fun. Derek?
Anna?
Would you watch this film again?
I would. Yeah. I think it's, the first maybe 75% of the buildup gets a little bit more challenging to watch the more you're familiar with like the background of it. But it's still a fun movie. It's still worth it just to see that insane fight where, Frank's literally getting the piss beat out of him and he's like, I'm not putting him on.
Yeah.
So
he's so stubborn.
Yeah. I think it's still, it's a fun movie. And as we've discussed, it still is relevant. Mm-hmm. Probably always will be, as long as there's, a class of people looking to exert influence over others. So yeah, I'd watch it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think also just from like kind of an artistic standpoint, it has a really interesting look and looks to it.
Yeah.
I found it really fascinating the way that Carpenter was in part telling his message through the difference between like black and white and color. And I found that all really, really interesting. So just even from like a purely kind of visual standpoint, I think it's a really cool film. And yeah, I mean, we went into it with Bob and just like the fact that it takes a full 30 minutes to like really get to...
Before he puts them on, right?
Yeah, before he puts on the glasses. And so there's a lot of grounding of this story, and that probably could be challenging for somebody who's watching this on a subsequent view, because you kind of want to get to it, but it is like an important part. And Bob did a really great job of kind of elaborating on like why it kind of had to happen that way.
Yeah.
So call to action. I don't even know. I mean, okay, look, we talked about this. We did this with Pumpkinhead. It is challenging to try to find a call to action with horror, anything sci-fi of that nature.
It really is.
But you know what I actually think would be kind of interesting is if anybody out there, just on the level of like his career as a whole, if other people have Roddy Piper films that they love, because this is honestly, I mean, I would say probably Frogtown is going to be the other one that people bring up the most.
I think
because it has like such a huge cult following.
I don't know anything about that movie.
Well, we won't get into it here, but it is a crazy story. It's a crazy story. So yeah, if you have that's going to be my call to action. I just want to know what people's like familiarity is with Piper's acting career, and if there are other films that they would like suggest we watch, because honestly I was that probably sounds like a kind of backhanded compliment. I'm not trying to be dismissive of the fact that like he could have had talent that I just wasn't aware of, but I always thought of him as this like big, larger than life wrestler who had this like huge personality, super loud, that was just how I remembered him. And so for him to give, and a lot of parts of this film, a very kind of understated performance, I was just like, wow, this is really good. So I'd be curious if other people are like, yeah, he's also really good in this movie, So that's my call to action.
All right. My call to action is how many times have you worked on construction projects just shirtless? And did anyone ever tell you to like, hey, you got to put some clothes on this site?
That is another thing in common with Pumpkinhead.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Where we have two movies in a row where we get these like glory shots of the main actor showing off that physique.
I mean, Lance was obviously in good shape, but Piper was jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. I mean, and that's when we mentioned with Bob, I mean, Keith David must also be a pretty decently...
He was taller than him.
Who was taller than him?
Frank was taller.
Okay, Frank was taller than... Yeah, I think that is the one thing that you usually find out is that sometimes wrestlers aren't as tall as you think they are.
But he was still a pretty big guy.
Yeah. I mean, like Hulk Hogan, he's legit tall.
Yeah. Andre the Giant was actually 5'10". I don't even know why I said that.
Okay. So moving on to our sneak peek of our next Halloween film.
What do we got? What do we got coming up?
I think this is our first remake that we're covering.
Interesting. Okay.
I'd have to, I guess, go through the previous episodes just to confirm that, but I think it is. So we have dun 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 dun.
Yeah. What is it? Give me a clue.
I don't even know what the clue would be. I don't know what that clue would be.
I don't know what that means.
It's like the creature moving. The Blob.
Oh, okay. The Blob. The Blob. All right.
Yeah. So it's a remake of the 1958 film that starred Steve McQueen.
That's kind of crazy that the original... I knew that there was the 1950s version of The Blob. I didn't realize that it starred Steve McQueen. That's nuts.
Yeah. Probably one of his earlier roles. And yes, so again, 1988. And super excited to chat about that one. Again, we will have an amazing guest to do so. And thank you to everybody out there for hanging with us. If you want to get in touch with us, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. It's the same handle for all three. It is at 80s Montage Pod. 80s is 80S. And that's all I got, Derek.
All right. Well, we will try to do better next time.